First contact and cultural shock. The massive space station Harmony hung in the void, a gleaming testament to interstellar cooperation. Its sleek, curved hull reflected the light of distant stars, while docking bays along its length accommodated vessels from a dozen different species. Today, however, all eyes were on a new arrival. The human ship Endeavour approached slowly, its engines pulsing with a soft blue glow. Captain Area Chen stood on the bridge, her dark eyes fixed on the looming station. This was humanity's first official contact with the Galactic Confederation, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. Docking procedure initiated. Captain, her first officer, Commander Jackson, reported. Area nodded, her short black hair bobbing slightly. Steady as she goes, Commander. Let's not give our new friends any reason to worry. As the Endeavour nestled into its assigned berth, a delegation of alien diplomats gathered in the docking bay. The Zarquin ambassador, Cinta, fidgeted nervously, his iridescent scales shimmering under the bay's bright lights. Beside him, the towering Vrock representative, Gorn, stood impassively, his rocky hide betraying no emotion. The airlock hissed open, and Captain Chen stepped out, flanked by her senior officers. She smiled warmly, extending a hand in greeting. On behalf of Earth and humanity, we come in peace and friendship. Cinta hesitated, then reached out with a clawed appendage to gently clasp Aria's hand. Welcome to Harmony Station, humans. We have long awaited this day. The initial meeting went smoothly, with both sides exchanging pleasantries and gifts. As they moved to the station's grand conference room, however, the first hints of cultural dissonance began to emerge. And this, Aria said, gesturing to a holographic display, is my family back on Earth. The image showed the captain with her wife and 2 children, all smiling. But what caught the aliens' attention was the large furry creature sitting beside them. What is that? Cinta asked, his voice quavering slightly. Aria's smile widened. That's Rex, our German shepherd. He's been with us for years, a loyal companion and protector. The room fell silent. Gorn's stony face cracked, literally, as his jaw dropped open. Protector? You mean it's a weapon? What? No, Aria laughed, not realizing the growing tension. Rex is a pet. Many humans keep animals as companions. They're part of our families. The alien delegation exchanged worried glances. Cinta's scales had paled to a sickly green. Captain Chen, he said carefully, are you saying that humans routinely keep dangerous predators in their homes? Aria frowned, sensing the shift in mood. I wouldn't call Rex dangerous. He's very well trained and gentle with the kids. But it could kill if it wanted to. Gorn pressed. Well, I suppose any animal could be dangerous if mistreated, Aria conceded. But that's not the point. Our pets are friends, not threats. The meeting deteriorated quickly after that. As more details about Earth's fauna emerged, the alien diplomats grew increasingly agitated. They learned of cats with their razor-sharp claws and predatory instincts, of snakes kept in glass enclosures but capable of delivering lethal venom. Even seemingly innocuous creatures like parrots were seen as potential threats, with their powerful beaks and ability to mimic human speech. This is madness, Cinta finally exclaimed, unable to contain himself any longer. You come from a death world, Captain Chen. A planet that should, by all rights, have killed your species eons ago. Instead, you've not only survived but thrived. And now you tell us you keep its deadliest creatures as pets. Aria struggled to maintain her composure. Ambassador, I think you're misunderstanding the situation. Our pets are domesticated, bred over generations to what? Gorn rumbled. To kill more efficiently at your command. No, Aria protested. To be companions, to offer comfort and... Comfort? Cinta's laugh was brittle. What comfort can there be, living alongside beasts that could tear you apart? As the arguments grew heated, news of the humans' strange customs spread through the station like wildfire. Alien crews eyed the Endeavor warily, half expecting monstrous creatures to come bursting out at any moment. In the ship's mess hall, the human crew sat in confused isolation, unable to understand why their new galactic neighbors suddenly seemed so afraid. Commander Jackson approached Aria as she stood alone, staring out a viewport at the stars beyond. "Captain, this isn't going well," he said softly. Aria sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I know, Tom. I never imagined this would be the sticking point. How do we explain thousands of years of human-animal bonds to beings who've never experienced anything like it?" "Maybe we can't," Jackson replied. "Not all at once, anyway. But we have to try. The Confederation's fear of us is growing by the hour." Aria nodded grimly. "You're right. We need to show them, somehow, that our relationships with animals are a strength, not a threat." She squared her shoulders, determination glinting in her eyes. "Send a message to Earth. Tell them we need a few special ambassadors, the four-legged kind." As the Endeavor's crew prepared for what would surely be a contentious demonstration, tensions on the station continued to rise. Rumors flew of humans possessing almost supernatural abilities, able to bend ferocious beasts to their will. Some saw it as a sign of humanity's inherent violence, while others whispered that perhaps humans themselves were more animal than sentient. In her quarters, Aria looked at a photo of her family, Rex's furry head resting contentedly on her daughter's lap. "Oh boy," she murmured, "what have we gotten ourselves into?" Little did she know, the cultural chasm revealed by humanity's love of pets was only the beginning. As humans and aliens struggled to understand one another, greater challenges and opportunities loomed on the horizon. Diplomatic incident. 2 standard months after the disastrous first contact, the human diplomatic corps was still struggling to smooth over the pet incident. Enter Ambassador Elena Rossi, a veteran diplomat known for her unflappable demeanor and innovative approach to interspecies relations. She had been dispatched to the alien world of Zarquin Prime, hoping to mend fences and foster better understanding between humans and their new galactic neighbors. Elena strode confidently through the ornate halls of the Zarquin High Council chambers, her crisp blue suit a stark contrast to the shimmering, scale-like architecture around her. At her side trotted a small, fluffy creature with intelligent eyes and a wagging tail. Ambassador Rossi, a Zarquin aide, chittered nervously. "I must once again express our concern about the presence of your companion." Elena smiled warmly. "I understand, Tixela. But I assure you, Max here is perfectly safe. He's a trained therapy animal, specially chosen for this mission." The aide's antennae twitched skeptically, but he said nothing more as they entered the council chamber. The circular room was filled with Zarquin dignitaries, their iridescent scales reflecting the soft bioluminescent lighting. A hush fell over the assembly as Elena took her place at the center of the room, Max sitting obediently at her feet. "Esteemed members of the High Council," Elena began, her voice clear and confident. "I come before you today in a spirit of openness and reconciliation. I know there have been misunderstandings between our peoples, particularly regarding humanity's relationship with other Earth species." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several council members eyed Max warily, as if expecting the small dog to suddenly transform into a ravening beast. "To that end," Elena continued, "I've brought along a very special ambassador of his own. This is Max, a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. He represents centuries of human-animal cooperation and companionship." She knelt down, gently stroking Max's silky ears. The dog's tail wagged happily, and he looked up at Elena with obvious adoration. A few of the younger Zarquin leaned forward, curiosity overcoming their initial fear. Max, like many Earth animals, has been selectively bred over generations to be a perfect companion for humans. He offers emotional support, unconditional love, and suddenly, a piercing alarm cut through the chamber. Red lights flashed, and the Zarquin burst into a frenzy of motion and high-pitched communication. "What's happening?" Elena shouted over the din. Tixela, the aide, rushed to her side. Atmospheric contamination detected. We must evacuate immediately. In the chaos that followed, Alina lost her grip on Max's leash. The small dog, overwhelmed by the noise and flashing lights, darted away into the panicked crowd. Max, Alina cried, trying to follow, but Tixela pulled her towards the exit. We must go, Ambassador. The air may become toxic. Alina resisted. I can't leave without Max. But the Zarquin security forces were insistent, practically dragging the human diplomat to safety. As the chamber emptied, blast doors slammed shut, sealing off the contaminated area, with Max still inside. Hours later, the crisis had been contained. A faulty air recycler had triggered the alarm, but there had been no actual contamination. Alina paced anxiously outside the sealed council chamber, ignoring the concerned looks from her Zarquin hosts. Please, she begged for the 100th time. You have to let me in there. Max must be terrified. The Zarquin security chief, his scales a deep authoritative purple, shook his head. It is not safe, Ambassador. We do not know what damage your creature may have caused in its panic. Alina's eyes flashed. Max is not dangerous. He's probably just curled up somewhere, scared and alone. Let me find him. Before the chief could respond, a commotion erupted down the hallway. A group of junior council members came rushing towards them, chittering excitedly. Chief Zixtal. One called out. You must see this. Reluctantly, the security chief allowed Alina to accompany them back into the chamber. As they entered, Alina gasped. The room was a mess, with overturned furniture and scattered datapads. But there, in the center of it all, was a sight that made her heart swell. Max sat calmly, surrounded by a group of young Zarquin. The alien younglings were cautiously petting his soft fur, giggling as Max responded with gentle licks and a wagging tail. He comforted our children, one of the council members said in awe. When they were trapped and afraid, your beast, no, your companion, kept them calm. Alina knelt down, and Max trotted over to her, tail wagging furiously. She scooped him up, burying her face in his fur to hide the tears of relief. This is what we've been trying to tell you, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Our animals are not just pets or possessions. They're partners, friends, sometimes even heroes. The mood in the chamber had shifted dramatically. The Zarquin council members gathered around, their fear replaced by cautious curiosity. Even Chief Zixtal's stern expression had softened. Perhaps, he admitted grudgingly, we have been too hasty in our judgments. In the days that followed, Max became something of a celebrity on Zarquin Prime. Alina's scheduled meetings were suddenly overbooked, with dignitaries and common citizens alike clamoring for a chance to meet the brave little Earth dog. But not everyone was convinced. As news of the incident spread across the galaxy, many alien species doubled down on their suspicion of humanity and their strange animal companions. Emergency sessions were called in the Galactic Confederation, with some representatives calling for strict quarantine measures against Earth and its unpredictable fauna. On the Harmony space station, Captain Aria Chen received the reports with a mixture of hope and trepidation. Well, she murmured to Commander Jackson, it seems Ambassador Rossi has opened a door, but will the rest of the galaxy be willing to walk through it? Jackson nodded thoughtfully. It's a start, Captain. But I have a feeling this is going to get worse before it gets better. As if on cue, Aria's comm unit chimed with an urgent message. Her eyes widened as she read it. Oh boy, she sighed. Looks like the Galactic Confederation is calling an emergency summit to address the Earth creature crisis. And guess who they want to represent humanity? Jackson groaned. Let me guess. Us. Aria nodded grimly. Pack your bags, Commander. And maybe bring some pet toys. I have a feeling we're going to need all the help we can get. As the Endeavor prepared for its journey to the galactic core, news of the upcoming summit spread like wildfire. Across the galaxy, Species debated and argued about the strange Deathworlders and their even stranger companions. Some saw potential in the human-animal bond, while others feared it as a sign of humanity's inherent savagery. One thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. The Galactic Summit. The Galactic Confederation's central meeting hall was a marvel of alien architecture, a vast spherical chamber that seemed to float in space. Delegates from hundreds of species filled the tiered seating, their varied forms a testament to the diversity of life in the universe. At the center of it all stood Captain Area Chen, flanked by Commander Jackson and a small delegation of human experts. And at Area's feet, calm and alert, sat a golden retriever named Buddy. The choice to bring an actual dog to the summit had been controversial, to say the least, but Area had insisted, arguing that words alone wouldn't be enough to bridge the vast cultural divide. They needed to show, not just tell. Esteemed representatives of the Galactic Confederation, the Arbiter, a being of pure energy contained within a hovering orb, announced, "We are gathered here to address the ongoing crisis surrounding humanity's integration into our community, specifically the issue of their animal companions." A ripple of unease passed through the chamber. Several delegates shifted in their seats, eyeing Buddy warily. "The floor recognizes Captain Area Chen of Earth," the Arbiter continued. Area stepped forward, taking a deep breath. "Thank you, Arbiter. Honored delegates, I stand before you today, not just as a representative of humanity, but as a bridge between worlds. I know our customs regarding animals have caused concern and even fear among many of you. I hope that today we can begin." Area continued, her voice steady and clear. "I hope that today we can begin to understand each other better. The bond between humans and animals is not one of master and slave, or even owner and pet. It's a partnership built on mutual trust, respect, and yes, love." A murmur rippled through the assembly. The Vrock representative, Gorn, his rocky hide gleaming under the chamber's lights, leaned forward. "Love? For beasts that could tear you apart? This is madness." Area knelt down, placing a hand on Buddy's head. The golden retriever looked up at her, brown eyes filled with trust. "Buddy here could certainly hurt me if he wanted to. He's strong with sharp teeth, but he doesn't want to. Our relationship is built on millennia of co-evolution and mutual benefit." She stood, addressing the chamber. "Humanity's homeworld, Earth, is indeed what you'd call a death world. To survive there, we didn't just adapt ourselves. We formed alliances. With plants we cultivated for food, with microorganisms that help us digest, and yes, with animals that became our companions, our helpers, and sometimes our protectors." The Zarquin ambassador, Sinta, his scales shimmering with uncertainty, spoke up. "But how can you trust them? How can you be sure they won't turn on you?" Area smiled. "The same way we trust each other, Ambassador, through understanding, through compassion, and through proving ourselves worthy of that trust." She gestured to Buddy. "Would you like to meet him?" Sinta recoiled slightly, but curiosity warred with fear in his large, faceted eyes. Slowly, hesitantly, he descended from his seat and approached the center of the chamber. Area knelt beside Buddy, speaking softly. "Gentle boy, say hello." Buddy sat perfectly still as Sinta approached, his tail wagging gently. The Zarquin ambassador extended a trembling, clawed hand. Buddy sniffed it delicately, then gave it a small lick. Sinta jerked back in surprise, then laughed. A chittering sound of delight. "It's warm and soft." The tension in the room noticeably eased. Other delegates began to lean forward, watching the interaction with fascination. Area seized the moment. "Representatives of the Confederation, I propose a cultural exchange program. Let us show you how we live with our animal companions. Let us demonstrate the benefits they bring, not just in terms of practical assistance, but in emotional support, in teaching us empathy and responsibility." The Arbiter's orb pulsed thoughtfully. "An intriguing proposal, Captain Chen. But there are concerns about safety, about the unpredictability of these creatures. Absolutely, Arya nodded. We take those concerns seriously. Any exchange program would involve extensive training, both for the animals and for those interacting with them. We have centuries of experience in animal husbandry and training. Let us share that knowledge. As the debate continued, more delegates came down to cautiously interact with Buddy. The dog's calm demeanor and obvious affection for Arya were making an impression. Even Gorn, the skeptical Vrock, found himself reluctantly admitting that there might be more to this human-animal bond than he'd first thought. But not everyone was convinced. A faction of hardliners, led by the insectoid Caxti, argued vehemently against any further integration of Earth animals into galactic society. This is a ploy, Caxti chittered angrily. First, they bring their pets. Then, when we've lowered our guard, they'll unleash the full fury of their Deathworld upon us. We should quarantine Earth and be done with it. The chamber erupted into chaos, with delegates shouting and arguing. Arya tried to restore order, but her voice was drowned out in the cacophony. Suddenly, a piercing howl cut through the noise. Every eye turned to Buddy, who sat calmly at Arya's feet, looking up at her expectantly. In the startled silence that followed, Arya spoke. That delegates is one of the many ways our animal companions communicate with us. Buddy sensed the tension, the conflict, and he intervened, not with aggression, but with a call for attention. She knelt down, rubbing Buddy's ears. "Good boy," she murmured. The Arbiter's orb pulsed rapidly. "Fascinating. It seems there is indeed much we do not understand about this relationship. Perhaps Captain Chen's proposal has merit." As the summit continued, opinions began to shift. While there was still considerable apprehension, many delegates were now curious rather than purely fearful. Plans were drawn up for a limited exchange program, with strict safety protocols in place. But even as progress was made in the chamber, forces were moving against them. In the shadows of the station, a group of extremists from various species had come together, united in their fear and hatred of humanity and their unnatural bonds with animals. As the final day of the summit dawned, Arya felt cautiously optimistic. They had made real progress, opening minds and challenging preconceptions. But she couldn't shake a sense of unease, a feeling that their problems were far from over. "Stay close, Buddy," she murmured as they prepared to enter the chamber for the final session. "I have a feeling we're going to need each other before this is done." Little did she know how prophetic those words would prove to be. The unforeseen threat. As the final session of the Galactic Summit began, an air of cautious optimism filled the chamber. While divisions remained, many delegates had been swayed by the demonstrations of the human-animal bond. Plans for a limited cultural exchange program were being finalized, with strict safety protocols in place. Captain Arya Chen stood at the center of the chamber, Buddy at her side, as she addressed the assembly. "Distinguished delegates, we stand at a crossroads. The path ahead may not be easy, but I believe that by working together, by learning from each other, we can forge a stronger, more understanding galactic community." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the station. Red emergency lights bathed the chamber in an eerie glow. "Warning," an automated voice announced. "Security breach detected. Unknown hostiles have boarded the station. All personnel, enact emergency protocols immediately." Chaos erupted in the chamber. Delegates scrambled for exits, their earlier unity forgotten in the face of danger. Arya's training kicked in, and she began directing people towards emergency shelters. "This way," she shouted over the din. "Remain calm and proceed to the nearest secure area." As the chamber emptied, Arya noticed a group of younger delegates, including several Zarquin and a young Vrock, huddled in a corner, too frightened to move. She rushed over to them, Buddy at her heels. "Come on," she urged. "We need to get you to safety." Suddenly, the main doors exploded inward. Through the smoke and debris stepped a group of armed intruders, a motley crew of various species, their faces masked and weapons raised. Nobody move. The leader, a tall, spindly being, shouted. This summit is over. The human threat ends now. Arya pushed the young delegates behind her, mind racing. The intruders were between them and the exit. She counted at least 10 armed hostiles, with possibly more on the way. What do you want? She called out, trying to buy time. The leader's mask turned towards her. Justice. Protection. The human menace and their beast slaves must be eradicated before they contaminate the entire galaxy. Arya's heart sank. Extremists, fueled by fear and misinformation. Reasoning with them would be difficult, if not impossible. Please, she said, hands raised placatingly. There are children here. Let them go, and we can talk about this. The leader laughed harshly. Talk? While you plot to unleash your Deathworld monstrosities upon us? I think not. Men, secure the hostages. Kill any humans who resist. As the armed intruders advanced, Arya knew she had to act. She knelt quickly beside Buddy, whispering urgently, Distraction, boy. Go. With a sharp bark, Buddy sprang into action. He raced towards the intruders, not attacking, but weaving between their legs, barking and snapping. The sudden movement caught them off guard, causing confusion in their ranks. Arya seized the moment. Run, she shouted to the young delegates. Head for the emergency pods. As the group fled, Arya provided cover, using overturned furniture as a barricade. Buddy continued his distraction, always staying just out of reach of the frustrated intruders. Shoot that beast, the leader screamed. But in the chaos, with Buddy's quick movements and the risk of hitting their own people, none of the intruders could get a clear shot. Arya and the young delegates reached a bank of emergency escape pods. As she hurried them inside, she heard a yelp of pain. Turning, she saw Buddy limping, a grazing shot having caught his hind leg. Buddy, she cried. Without hesitation, she raced back into the danger zone. The young Vrak, Kira, called out in panic. Captain Chen, come back. But Arya was focused solely on reaching her injured companion. She dodged weapons fire, sliding the last few meters to scoop Buddy into her arms. As she turned to run back, she found her path blocked. The leader of the intruders stood before her, weapon raised. Foolish human, he snarled, risking your life for a mere animal. This is why your kind is too dangerous to be allowed in the galaxy. Your misplaced loyalties, your unpredictability. Arya stood tall, Buddy cradled in her arms. This isn't misplaced loyalty. This is compassion, something it seems you've forgotten. The leader's finger tightened on the trigger. Arya closed her eyes, holding Buddy close. Suddenly, a roar shook the chamber. Arya's eyes snapped open to see Gorn, the massive rock delegate, charging into the room. Behind him came a squad of Confederation security forces, led by Commander Jackson. In the ensuing firefight, Arya ran for the escape pods, the injured Buddy held tightly in her arms. As the pod door sealed behind them, she caught a glimpse of the intruders being overwhelmed by the combined forces of the security team and several of the braver delegates. As the pod launched, streaking away from the embattled station, Arya tended to Buddy's wound. It was painful, but not life-threatening. The young delegates crowded around, their earlier fear of the dog forgotten as they watched Arya care for him with gentle hands and soothing words. Kira, the young Vrak, spoke up hesitantly. You went back for him, even though it meant you might die. Arya nodded, not looking up from her first aid efforts. Of course. He's family. He would have done the same for me. There was a moment of silence, broken only by Buddy's soft whines and Arya's murmured reassurances. Then Cinta, one of the young Zaraquin, asked quietly, Captain Chen, do you think I could pet him, to help him feel better? Arya looked up, a tired smile crossing her face. I think he'd like that very much. As the escape pod hurtled through space, carrying them to safety, Arya watched the young aliens cautiously, but eagerly interacting with Buddy. Despite the pain of his injury, the dog's tail wagged gently, accepting their tentative pats and scratches. In that moment, surrounded by the aftermath of violence born of fear and misunderstanding, Arya saw a glimmer of hope. It wasn't much, a small group of young aliens overcoming their instinctive fear to comfort an injured Earth animal. But it was a start. The real battle, she realized, wouldn't be won with weapons or force. It would be won in moments like these, with open minds and open hearts. As the pod's communication system crackled to life, bringing news of the situation back on the station, Arya squared her shoulders. There would be fallout from this attack, political repercussions to navigate, but they had made progress. They had shown the truth of the human-animal bond in the most powerful way possible. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to change the course of galactic history. A new understanding. In the weeks following the attack on the Galactic Summit, the political landscape of the Confederation was in turmoil. The extremists' actions had paradoxically strengthened humanity's position, as many delegates who had witnessed Arya and Buddy's bravery spoke out in support of closer human-alien relations. The Harmony space station, now repaired and with increased security, hosted a follow-up conference. Captain Arya Chen, still nursing a few bruises from the ordeal, stood before the assembly once more. This time, however, the atmosphere was markedly different. "Distinguished representatives," Arya began, her voice steady, "we gather again in the aftermath of violence, born from fear and misunderstanding. But we also gather in the light of hope, of new possibilities." She gestured to her side, where Buddy sat, his injured leg now healed but still bearing a small scar. "My companion, Buddy, like all of us, carries the marks of our recent trials. But also like us, he stands ready to move forward, to build a better future." The chamber was silent, all eyes fixed on the human and her dog. "In our darkest moment, when faced with those who would divide us, we found strength in unity. Humans, Vrak, Zarquin, and others, we stood together. And in doing so, we demonstrated the very essence of what we've been trying to explain about our bond with Earth's animals. It's about partnership, about trust, about facing challenges together." Xinta, the Zarquin ambassador, rose to speak. His scales shimmered with a new pattern, one that Arya had learned indicated respect and admiration in their culture. "Captain Chen speaks the truth," Xinta announced. "I, like many of you, feared the humans and their animal companions. I saw only the potential for danger. But in our hour of need, I witnessed firsthand the loyalty, the bravery, and yes, the love between human and animal. It is a bond we would be foolish to dismiss." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Even Gorn, the usually stoic Vrak representative, nodded his rocky head. Arya continued, "The cultural exchange program we proposed before the attack is more important now than ever. Let us learn from each other. Let us grow together. And perhaps in time, some of you may discover the joy of forming your own bonds with Earth's animals." Over the following months, the exchange program began in earnest. Under carefully controlled conditions, humans and their animal companions visited worlds across the Confederation. Earth, in turn, welcomed alien scientists and cultural observers. There were challenges, of course. On the desert world of Tarla, a visiting border collie's herding instinct caused chaos in a colony of native creatures, leading to a diplomatic incident that took weeks to smooth over. On Earth, a Zarquin scientist's natural bioluminescence triggered a panic response in a group of forces, resulting in a stampede and some property damage. But there were triumphs as well. A team of search and rescue dogs proved invaluable when a rock mining colony suffered a catastrophic cave-in. The dog's ability to navigate tight spaces and detect signs of life saved dozens of rock workers who would otherwise have perished. On the water world of Aqualis, the aquatic inhabitants were initially terrified of Earth's marine mammals. But when a pod of dolphins helped rescue an Aqualian child caught in a dangerous current, perceptions began to shift dramatically. Perhaps the most surprising development came from the Caxti, the insectoid species that had been among the most vehement opponents of human-animal integration. A Caxtee biologist, studying the relationship between bees and flowers on Earth, became fascinated by the complex social structures of bee colonies. This led to a breakthrough in understanding their own hive-based society, sparking a cultural renaissance among the Caxtee. As the galactic cycles passed, the initial fear and mistrust began to fade. Some alien species even began to adopt Earth animals as companions, though the process was slow and required extensive adaptation on both sides. 5 years after the summit attack, Aria found herself back on the Harmony Station, this time for a celebration. The chamber that had once been a battleground was now festooned with decorations from a dozen worlds. Delegates mingled freely, many accompanied by Earth animals that had been specially trained for off-world life. Aria smiled as she watched Xinta, the once fearful Zarquin ambassador, play fetch with his adopted Jack Russell Terrier. Nearby, a group of rock children giggled as they gently stroked a purring Maine Coon cat, marveling at its